right, we are very pleased to be here today with Dr. Laurie Marbas. Dr. Marbas is a board-certified family medicine physician and a board-certified physician in lifestyle medicine. She utilizes a whole food plant-based approach with her patients for the past 6 years. She's been doing that in rural Colorado, and she's been the former medical director of Dr. Furman's Health Oasis in Boca Raton, Florida. Dr. Marbas is the host of the podcast called How to Health, and a website that has online self-guided classes for individuals who want to make a transition to a whole food plant-based diet, and also offers many resources for parents to help their kids eat healthier as well. She's also working with Chef Martin Oswald on a new project called Doc and Chef, bringing flavor to health. She's spoken at the Plantrition Project, at Cultura, Golden Veg Fest in Colorado, and other venues teaching about the value of a whole food plant-based diet. She's also written 7 books while she was in medical school, 6 of which were in a series called Visual Mnemonics, using cartoons to memorize vast amounts of information because she was also a mom at the same time she was a medical student. She is a USAF veteran, having served both in the Middle East and in South America. She's also a wife, a mother of 3 grown children, and an avid runner. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Dr. Marbas.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So here's the first question for you. Can you give us a little intro into your personal story as to how you first got involved with plant-based nutrition?
Absolutely. So this started back in 2012. I was in a little town called Rifle, Colorado. So I always like to joke, there was a lot of hunters and no gatherers. But at that time, I actually had a patient come in who was morbidly obese. She was young, 37. And she just happened to mention to me, Dr. Marbas, meat and dairy upset my stomach. I said, well, stop eating meat and dairy. And she did. And I knew she was actually going to be okay. I knew intuitively she would be all right, but it didn't register with me that that was actually a plant-based diet. I noted in her chart, she came back in 30 days. I didn't really think much about it. But when she came back, her daughter had gone on the diet with her. Her daughter at that time was 16. And during that 30 days, her daughter pulled herself off 2 attention deficit disorder medications. And she actually brought her daughter back to the appointment because she couldn't understand how a change in her diet, just with removing meat and dairy, would actually allow her to pull herself off those medications. And she was, Dr. Marbas, why was she able to do that? And I was like, I don't know, but that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I was trying to figure this out in my brain. You're going back through years of medical education, post high school, it's 11 years. And so I was struggling, and I started asking her, I just said, what were you eating? And I was like, at the end of it, she was like, she was eating plants. And the first thing I Googled, of course, thank goodness for Google, I found the China study. I got the China study. I downloaded electronic format, and I read it in 2 days. So thankful for Dr. Campbell. And I'm sitting here going, I have to relearn medicine because this is not how I was taught. I mean, I know how to diagnose, I know how to treat with prescriptions, I know how to do certain procedures, refer for procedures, but I was never understood the value of the nutrition. I mean, it was such a simple concept, but so revolutionary at the same time. It was really hard for my brain to wrap around. And so what happened is I said, I really want to try this on one more person, because at that time, my kids were 13, 15, and 18, and a husband. I was like, before I even begin to use this with patients, I have to do it myself. So I had a lupus patient come in 2 weeks later. And I was like, I'm going to try this on one more patient. And we did. And she was willing to do it. And within 5 months, she had lost 50 pounds. Her lupus nephritis had resolved. She was off 7 to 12 meds, including methotrexate, which is a chemo drug, high doses of prednisone. And during that time when we had transitioned her, we had measured her inflammatory markers, and she had remarkable improvement in a period of 2 weeks. And so after that 2 weeks, I went home and I said, you know what, that's it. I literally walked in the door, threw down my purse, gathered everything in the refrigerator, meat, dairy, eggs, you name it, all gone. Milk, cheese, out the door, threw it out. My kids were like, I don't know what just happened to Mom. My husband's just like, are you still cooking? I was like, yeah. He goes, whatever, I'll eat anything. Thank goodness. We had raised them not to be picky. We didn't have I went to medical school with 3 little kids, like, you'll eat what I fix. Otherwise you're going to be hungry in the morning, I guess. And, and that served us well in this transition. I also had a quarter of a grass-fed beef because, I thought I was trying to be healthy in my garage in the freezer. And I was trying to figure out what to do with that, because that's just not something you just go throw in a garbage can. We lived in rural Colorado. There's bears and other things that roam around that are large creatures, and I didn't want any part of that. So I was like, well, maybe I'll donate it to the animal shelter. I just didn't know. I wasn't going to give to a human because I felt like I was killing someone. And 48 hours later, I'm not kidding you, we had left and came back. My freezer had broke. And sure enough, that meat and the smell and the stench and that was such a vivid memory for me. My husband's like, if you had not been with us, I would have sworn you would have unplugged it. And I was like, I think that's a divine intervention. God was speaking, Laurie, you were done. And I never looked back. And that was almost 6 years ago now.
Wow, that's amazing. So as you made this transition in your own life, what happened to your practice? How did your practice change?
So this is really interesting. It was quite an evolution because I was searching everywhere. It's like, where can I go to learn how to do this as a doctor? And I couldn't find anything. I thought I was literally like the lone voice in the forest. I had no one to turn to. So luckily I found Dr. McDougall's information. I began to find PCRM. I found Dr. Esselstyn. I was devouring the books. I went to the Cleveland Clinic and hang out with Dr. Esselstyn to learn even more. I went to PCRM and got their Food for Life training, because for me, I couldn't refer to the local dietitian. She thought I was crazy. So what I had to do over the course of the year as I worked with my patients, I was presenting it at every opportunity I could. And as we were learning, and I was learning, okay, this wasn't working, this was working. I was typing this all up, and I eventually came up with, in about 9 months, a 30-page handout. So what I would do in the mornings was go through my 22 some odd patients and just say, okay, that's a diabetic. They're coming in for UTI, but they're still getting my handout. Maybe have 8 or 9 patients that I knew that I was going to actually present this information to. I had a highlighter in hand. It was already printed. So I walked in the door. The first moment I could actually begin that conversation was how it started. And the handout was monumental as far as making the transitions easier, because I had a step-by-step how to do it, resources, what to buy. We had a Walmart, a City Market. I said, this is where you'll go, down this aisle, check this out. And that's how it all began. And we started having some really amazing results.
This is phenomenal. So this summit basically is about, how people living with all forms of diabetes, whether it's type 1, type 1.5, pre-diabetes, or type 2 diabetes, can transition to a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet for ultimate success. So in your practice, do you interact with people who have either pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes? And if so, can you give us some advice as to how you specifically coach them through a transition towards a plant-based diet?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other thing. They don't teach you how to stop medications. So this was something else I had to kind of gather what I could, bits and pieces from Dr. McDougall and, Dr. Furman's books and different things. And so basically, absolutely, I would say a third of my patients a day are either pre-diabetic or diabetic. Typically type 2, I do had some type 1s. We've had some good success with type 1s, controlling their blood sugars. And what we do basically is I talk to them if they're on insulin or certain types of oral medications, we have to be very careful. So when we start full force, I usually cut their insulin dose in half the first day, just because I'm so worried about them getting too low. We can deal with the higher blood sugars, but those low blood sugars are what worry me, especially if you're in rural Colorado. If I have someone living by themselves, a lot of times they lived in the outskirts of town, far in like the only house for miles. So we had to be very careful. And then also with hypertensive meds, we had to be very careful. And so the way I would coach it was, I was like, now let's look at your medications. One, let's see the cost. A lot of them were paid. They didn't have necessarily insurance for medications. We talked about the cost. We talked about the inconvenience. If you have insulin and having to inject yourself, if you're a type 2, I tell them this is a disease of choice as a type 2. And then we talked about the foods, and I would draw out, I have it takes me about 5 minutes to draw out insulin resistance. We talk about what you're eating. We talk about the insulin receptors and the insulin resistance from the saturated fats. And then we talk about the liver and all these things and how they interact. And I can draw it out in a diagram, and then they understand, because I feel like I'm very visual. And if I can draw it out as I'm talking, they can understand. And a lot of times I'll quiz them along the way, and they're getting it. And that works really, really well.
It would be amazing if you could be everybody's doctor. I mean, this is the handout you give people. I mean, it's a lot like our online course where we sort of teach people step by step what to do. It's amazing. So something we run into a lot with our clients is the fact that they don't have people like you as their doctor. And they're always learning, how, or curious to learn more about how they can talk to their doctor. So do you have tips for how somebody could just learn about this lifestyle, they want to make changes, but they also want to be safe and talk to their doctor? How can they do that?
So I think it depends on your relationship with the doctor and how open you think the doctor will be. Some doctors you can be, hey, I'm going to do this plant-based, lifestyle. I want to get off medications, and they'll be open armed. Let's try it. They'll be excited for you like I would have been. But there are going to be others that may be a little bit more resistant. And I think the patient would probably know how that is. If that's the case, I don't say go in there and tell them you're doing a plant-based, diet and this is how you're going to do it. You just say, I'm going to really start eating healthy. I'm going to start exercising, and I'm going to need some help with my medications. Will you make sure that I'm doing this safely? And that's how I approach it. That way they're not building that resistance right in the beginning. And honestly, if you're not unsure, just start with the latter. Just say, hey, I'm going to start really eating well. I'm cutting out my processed foods, and they don't have to mention anything about a plant-based diet.
That's actually really good, because what you're saying is that they don't even have to bring up the words plant-based diet, vegan, vegetarian, none of that. You just sort of say, I'm trying to eat a healthier diet. And then, which physician's going to say no to that?
Exactly. And everyone knows vegetables and fruits and grains and beans are healthy for you. So they're not going to argue with it. They're not even going to probably question it, because they don't know enough about nutrition to start questioning it. It makes doctors very uncomfortable if they don't have it to start saying, well, what exactly you're going to be eating? They're going to be saying, oh, you should be go seeing your dietitian or something like that. But really, all you have to do is say, I'm just going to eat a healthier diet. I'm just trying to get healthier. And they're going to go, oh, cool.
Right. Okay. So on that tip, though, so one of the pieces of feedback that we get from a lot of people that join our coaching program is that they get frustrated when their doctors, of course, their doctor wants them to eat a healthier diet, but sometimes what their physician thinks is healthy is a low carbohydrate diet. And so, full disclosure, we love working with doctors, and we partner with doctors, and we don't want to come across as though we're trying to, shun the medical community by any respect. But we do see a lot of people who get frustrated with their physician when the message is low carbohydrate, paleo, keto, South Beach zone diet, Atkins diet, something of that nature. So do you have any advice? Suppose, you had a patient, or you had a friend who had a doctor, who was giving them that advice. What could you do if you were in that situation?
There's a few things you can do. Number one, you can ask your doctor for scientific evidence of why they're suggesting this. Was this just because they had a friend who did it, or maybe they saw a commercial about the Atkins diet or something? I don't know. I would ask for, what is your evidence? What is your long-term evidence to prove that this will actually be benefit to me? I know what I want to do. I would like to try this other diet. Here's the evidence. Boom. You can present any of the books, Dr. Greger's book. You could present Dr. Furman's book, Dr. Bernard's book, Dr. Esselstyn's book, the China study. And I said, and you can go to them and say, they have long-term evidence that this works really well for type 2 diabetics to reverse my diabetes. I don't want to eat a lot of meat and dairy. Or you could say this, I have ethical reasons not to eat that. I can't eat a high protein meat diet because honestly, I don't feel the animal should be eaten. And that alone would probably cut it in half. So there's a few, that may not be a true obvious, but there's a few options there. Asking for the evidence, and then but then again, you have to be a little careful because you don't want to cloud the water. Someone needs to be really comfortable with the science of the plant-based diet when they do approach the doctor, maybe doing it that way. But however, honestly, you would just say, I'm not going to be doing that because I don't feel that's the healthiest way. And I know this will actually work. And sometimes you have to maybe get a different doctor too. That's always an option.
Yeah, actually, I'd never really thought about handing them a book, being like, this is Dr. Barnard's book, this is, the China study. But that's actually a really compelling, sell. And doctors may or may not read that information, but at least they're being presented with information that they may not know in the first place.
Right, absolutely. And they could even find a study, Google plant-based diet for diabetes. They maybe even pull up a PubMed or something and present that to their doctor. At least get those wheels going, because the doctor, if they're worth their salt, they're going to at least look at it. I've had patients bring me all sorts of books. I at least look at this information so I know what my patient's doing, because I need to understand where they're coming from for me to actually have that relationship. As a primary care doctor, I need to understand not only their medical problems, I need to understand what kind of relationships are going on in their life. Are they stressed from their job? Are they depressed because they just lost their mother? Or, there's a lot of different things that are going on. And that's what a primary care doctor is supposed to do anyway.
It's a great call. It's a great call. So slight change of subject here. So we've seen that you have created some really good content about how to eat healthy while on a budget, using food buying food at places like Walmart or Aldi as an example. This is particularly helpful for, people that live in areas where it's either a food desert or where the only places they can go are actually these really large sort of strip mall type, stores. There's also a common misconception that in order to eat a plant-based whole food diet, that you have to shop at Whole Foods or other sort of like gourmet grocery stores, and therefore it's going to become more expensive. So can you give our listeners some tips for how to make eating a plant-based diet actually very affordable?
Absolutely. So first of all, 2 of my 3 kids are boys, and then I have a husband. And my husband lost 65 pounds, by the way, doing this.
Nice.
Yeah. So I don't know if anyone's ever fed teenage boys, but they eat a lot of food. I mean, I always see you guys eating. So these are young men. You guys eat a lot of food. You're growing. You're active. So I was always thinking, boy, I thought it would be more expensive. But my grocery bill in Western Colorado, where there's only one Whole Foods, by the way, on the entire western slope of Colorado, which was a 2.5-hour drive, which I didn't have time to go by yet, nor did I want to spend my entire paycheck there. My grocery bill dropped $400 a month. I mean, that was incredible to me. And I shopped at Walmart, I shopped at City Market, and I shopped at another store about an hour away called Sprouts. And we had a variety of food. We had great food because, trust me, but as we moved into this and the kids saw this was not going to reverse, they're like, we need some other flavors, Mom. We can't just have beans out of a can and, potatoes every night. As I was just trying to figure out how to get going. So the key is, one, you want to start shopping obviously in the produce section, but buy in season. Buy things that are local. Those are going to be cheaper. If you have a farmer's market or if you have a farmer's neighbor, do something like that. We did a ton of sharing in the gardens. There's a ton of garden things that grow. Kale grows amazingly well in Western Colorado. I had so much kale that I would bring it in. Other people would bring in their zucchini. Someone else would bring me tomatoes. So there's all those type of things you can do. Shopping with coupons. I love signing up for like the City Market card that we get. Oh, this is one thing. You should sign up for the grocery discount. A lot of them will have that because they want to bring you in with coupons. And at least what City Market or Kroger do, I would stop getting all the junk. You know how you would always get coupons, they'd send them for you for some junk processed meal stuff. I started getting coupons, $20 off for produce because that's all I bought. They're like, well, we're going to have to send her a coupon for produce to get this person in. And that's what worked. And that worked great. So I did that. That was fantastic. And I think batch cooking at home makes it easier if don't go out to eat, but cook at home, and that's going to be cheaper. If you try to go out and eat all the time eating this way, just eating out in general is going to be more expensive. But trust me, we eat on a very minimal budget. And I've even done this on less than $50 a week for myself when I was here in Florida by myself as my family was transitioning. Easily less than $50 a week.
So what you're saying is then because you were buying produce, the grocery store started sending you coupons for more produce because they knew that was your shopping habits.
Yep, and almond milk and Ezekiel bread and, all those things, canned beans, dried beans. I would show people my coupons. They're like, well, I don't get that. I get things for like ice cream and, frozen pizzas. Like, well, that's what you're buying.
Yeah, so. That's brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Works really well.
Okay, so those are terrific tips for saving money. But another thing people are sometimes concerned about is saving time and how much time it takes to adopt this lifestyle. So do you have any tips for making it more doable in regards to time?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I love people bringing me problems. So that's kind of how we started with the How to Health, was because we'd like to obliterate the obstacles. First of all, I was driving an hour to work one way, raising 3 children, doing a plant-based diet. There was nowhere for us to go out to eat in my little town of 2,500 people. So yes, you can do this in a time crunch. What we do is we would batch cook. For example, if I didn't want to chop all the veggies, maybe I'd buy the baby kale and spinach and put it all in one big bowl. It was in there, have the chopped veggies ready to go. right now, like, for example, I will cook a lot of soups. My 21-year-old eats a lot of food, though. He eats so much. I would think, oh, I have like 3 days worth, and it's gone in like in a day and a half. But I'm trying. But that's what we do. We cook, batch cook. Like tonight, I'm going to make a butternut squash soup, and that will, batch cook. And then if you need to do like a Sunday, Wednesday, you can do that, or you can freeze some from Sunday. You can use your Instapot. Is amazing. Apparently, I gave mine to my daughter, so she continued eating plant-based. So that worked out well. The Vitamix is a great thing. So those little bit of investments for those tools are really important, I think, as well. And don't be afraid to try new things, try new recipes, but really batch cooking is the key.
That's excellent. I love how you like breaking down the barriers. I mean, that's terrific. What do you see as the number one challenge that people face when it comes to changing their lifestyle, and how do you help them overcome that?
Well, that really depends, but oftentimes I think it's going out to eat. So that was a big component of American lifestyle now is, well, I would always go out to eat at this restaurant, and I would always go out to do that. So part of my classes that I would teach is I'm like, give me every single restaurant that you guys want to eat at. I don't care if it's, Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Show me which one. We'll write it down, and we'll pull up their menus online, and we'll go through and say, this is what you can eat. This is what you should order. And then tell people it's okay to, eat ahead a little bit. If you're worried that you're going to be going somewhere and you don't have a choice, then eat ahead or bring your own food. So those are the things there. And the other issue is sometimes the family. So if I have a wife that wants to do it or husband that wants to do it, and they don't get along and they don't meet. So that's when I say, bring them into the appointment, bring them to me. Let's talk how we can figure out how to help you. If they won't come, I say, well, fix your meal, and they can fix theirs. If they don't want to fix it, then you can fix whatever a little bit to make them happy, meat or whatever. But you fix your plant-based meal. They can eat that along with that addition. So there's a lot of traditional, moms in the kitchen cooking, and they're working and they're stressed, and now they're trying to be healthy. And then the husband's like, I want my meat and potatoes, well, meat and cheese and whatever. But it's like, you've got to set down some barriers, but you can still cook those healthy meals and just provide a little bit. And they're going to get healthier to boot. And then maybe they'll come along. So I think those are the different things. And the kids, parents, it's okay to parent. Okay, it's okay to go home and say, this is what we're eating. You don't have to adjust your meals. You don't have to cook 3 different meals for 3 different kids. That is absolutely ludicrous. Or if I hear someone say, oh, my kids will only eat McDonald's nuggets. I'm like, how old are they? They're 6. Well, you buy them. If they throw a fit, guess what? They'll quit throwing a fit eventually. I promise. They really will. And you'll be better for them. I'm like, if you're trying to eat healthier, don't you want your children to eat healthier? It's okay to take control of the kitchen, bring them into the kitchen. I have a thing, 57 tips how to get your kids to eat their vegetables. There's so many things you can do, but parents are afraid to parent. I'm like, no, just do it. It's what you got to do.
Well, one thing that I actually hear a lot from parents is that not only they say, well, my kid's not going to eat that food, by the way. And I say, same thing as you. It's like, well, have you put it in front of them, and have you sort of enforced it? But secondarily, a lot of parents believe that, my kid needs, and it's a need, has to eat milk, has to eat cheese, has to eat eggs for brain development and neurological development. And I'm just like, whoa, that is just straight folklore, right? Mm-hmm. Have you heard that before? And what do you say in those situations?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I've even had pediatricians come up to me and say, why are you telling, maybe I saw their patient, why are you telling my patients they don't need milk or they shouldn't be consuming dairy? I was like, first of all, if all the cows disappeared off the face of the earth today, our health will skyrocket. I promise. There is absolutely no reason as a human, we need milk from another species to consume it, to be healthy, to get calcium, to get whatever. I said, if anything, we're causing risk factors for, there is a concern, hypothetical concern about type 1 diabetes, about allergies, about asthma, about IBS. There's lactose intolerance. Like, why would you want to put your kid through that? And also, very common, very, very common is that you'll get small children who are drinking milk after age 1. They're drinking milk out of a bottle. They become anemic because they know that the milk actually causes slight bleeding in the intestines. And so then what the pediatrician will do is they'll put them on an iron supplement. Instead of saying, well, let's stop your milk, move to something else, They'll put them on iron supplements. That kills me. So no, absolutely, you don't need dairy to survive it. Actually, you're going to feel so much better without it. It's incredible.
Yeah, this has been awesome. I think one of the things I love most about you is that you're very practical in your approach, right? So you have the science, you understand exactly, what does the evidence say? What does the short-term evidence say? What does the long-term evidence say? And what do we really know as physicians, so that you can actually guide your patients towards better health? So that's one thing. But then from just a straight practical perspective, you get it. Why? Because you've had to learn it yourself, right? It's not just theory for you. You're raising kids. You have a husband. You're feeding yourself, right? You have a job. So it's like, because all of these obstacles have been put in front of you, you're basically saying like, all right, I'm just going to figure this out and I'm just going to nail it. So thank you for, like providing these tips for our audience, because I know a lot of people get caught up and they sort of it can either stop their progress, or they can kind of like use it as an excuse to not continue on a plant-based diet. And I think your approach is actually just like very straightforward, and it's not complicated at all. It's just like, just do it the way that I suggest and watch as your life gets very simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people think they have to actually learn how to cook differently. No, you're just cooking different foods. And actually my food choices have broadened tremendously. I mean, I never had jicama, and I never tried all these different flavors and cooked with Indian and lentils and dals. And I mean, there's so much flavor and so much good food that it's not that difficult. It's a really wonderful journey that you can do.